Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are covering an oil cooler rebuild on a 7.3. This is that Super Duty engine that I'd been working on in a previous video, and also the one that I had used in the comparison video between the OBS and the Super Duty. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the cooler. I've already removed it, and because the engine's out of the truck, it makes it a lot easier to do. So doing it in the truck is a little bit different. However, getting it all rebuilt is the same process. I'd like to cover rebuilding it because a lot of guys aren't real sure, or they have unorthodox methods. You want to be very, very careful with these because they are cast aluminum pieces on the end. So we'll go ahead and go over that with you today and go ahead and show you what this block looks like with the oil cooler removed. So here we are, we got the oil cooler removed. And as you can see, there's a little bit of corrosion here, so we'll have to clean that up a little bit. And then the front, which is the timing cover here, timing cover looks really good, not a lot of corrosion. That's a plus. So you have your oil passages here. This is a coolant passage. This is a coolant passage, and this is an oil passage. This runs directly to the cooler, but also to the high pressure reservoir up top here. So this is why I always suggest using the screen on the high pressure reservoirs. So the OBS trucks, you can buy an adapter that will let you run the screen in the high pressure oil gasket, the high pressure oil reservoir gasket. I highly recommend it. A lot of guys are going to argue with me on it. I have had people argue with me on it. However, your high pressure oil pump will receive unfiltered oil directly from your pan. When? It's up to the engine because it's all done by pressures and everything like that. So to feed the injectors, which is its main component, it likes to pull oil direct from the pan and can actually bypass the oil cooler, which has the oil filter on it. So you can get unfiltered oil into your high pressure oil pump, and I highly suggest putting the screen in. So this truck here is new enough because it's a Super Duty engine. It already has that screen in there, and anything that gets into your oil pan that gets past the pickup screen, which is fairly large, can make it to the high pressure oil pump. And it doesn't take much to screw up an injector. So just something to keep in mind. But we'll go ahead and I'll set the camera up and I'll show you how I get these oil cooler ends off of here and show you what I do. So here's your oil cooler. This is the timing cover side. This is obviously the back side that goes to the block. This is your block heater. If you have this out, this is a great opportunity to change this block heater. They do go bad. We replaced this one on this truck not too long ago, which can be quite fun because when you take this out, which is your block heater, that is a direct passage to coolant, and that's a very large hole, and it will come out very quickly. So you have to be quick if you're changing these in the truck. So if you think that your block heater isn't performing correctly, which it can, I've had them fail. This one actually failed on us a couple years ago. So, now's the time to replace it. It's not a very expensive piece. It's a lot easier to replace it here. So these oil coolers, I've cleaned this one up a little bit. It still has some oil in it. So you have a pin and a pin. Those pins don't matter. They're which way this oil cooler goes. It does not matter. However, you have an alignment area here, and there's no alignment area on this side here. So when you put these together, you want to make sure that you're still able to spin this very, very lightly, and you'll use lubricant to put these O-rings back in. Usually whenever these are bad, so usually the O-rings are bad, we're just doing this one to preventative maintenance since the engine's out of the truck. You can usually pull these right apart. So this one is still pretty tight on here. So the best thing to do with these is take a dead blow, and you're going to want to hit it, and it should come off with a little bit of force. So you heard the change there. So as you can see, it's starting to come off here. I don't like to hit these very hard because you risk damaging it because they are just cast aluminum. So once you get it broke free enough there, you can take a pry bar, which should fit in here, and just work this off nice and easily, as evenly as you can. Like I said, I'm gonna make a mess. So there, we finally got that off of there. So as you can see, we have a piece of O-ring here. It's a little hard to see, but it's there. And that is from right there. So this is what happens. These O-rings, they get hard. This one was starting to get hard. So what happens is they don't want to move or stay flexible. So here's your other O-ring. And I usually just take a knife and cut those off. So I have an Olfa knife here. These things are very, very handy. So just cut through that. And as you can see, it's pretty stiff. A lot of times I've taken those apart and they've actually just crumbled in my hands. So I'm going to take this over and put it in the parts washer so it quits making a mess. So now the other side we get to have fun with here. This one probably won't come off as nicely. Well, that one come right off. That's a surprise. But anyway, I always suggest using a dead blow for these because the dead blow doesn't have that shock that a metal or abrasive hammer could have. I don't even like using a brass hammer for this just because they have a tendency to also create that shock. And you can create that shock with a dead blow too. It's just not as easy. So something I want to show you here. Let's see if I can get this. So you see all this right here? This is all real rough. That is corrosion that happens just from normal wear and tear. If you're not in the north, you don't get this as much. But I'll take a wire wheel or even a wire brush and just clean these edges up so they're nice and smooth, because you have to press this back onto the cooler and you don't want to mark those O-rings up. So I'm going to take this over to the parts washer, clean it up, clean this a little bit up, and then I'll bring that back and show you how we put this back together. Okay, so show you some of this corrosion here. So you can see here. So that's all corrosion. And as you can see, it was starting to get into where the O-ring sits, because this little line right here looks a little bit green. That is the inside of that O-ring. So you want to make sure that you get this nice and clean. Use a wire wheel, whatever you want to use to get this cleaned up. This one's clean. I didn't touch this one. I just had to clean some of the grime off of it. But you can see it's nice and smooth and clean. That way it won't destroy your O-ring putting it in. Like I said, I use a parts washer to clean these all up. I'll scuff this up a little bit of Scotch-Brite just to make it nice and smooth, and do the same thing on this one here. Just make this nice and smooth so that it doesn't cause a problem sealing, because these are thin metal gaskets with rubber O-rings on them. So we'll get these cleaned up and I'll show this again to you, and then I'll get the cooler over here and start putting it back together. Okay, so I got this all cleaned up now, and As you can see, this is, you still see some of the corrosion on there, but it's much, much smoother, which is what you want. And we got these gasket surfaces all cleaned up. So something else that you want to do. This is not something that you should do. This is something you need to do. So we're going to see if we can do this. So you see how you see light through the holes here? It's hard to do with the camera. However, what you need to do is you need to make sure that these holes are all clean. So use a parts washer. I don't recommend using a hose because you can get water in your oil area, which is not good. So this is where your coolant passes through. This coolant passes through the cooler, which cools the oil, which is inside, comes out the other side. And then the oil comes out this side, or vice versa. So I've seen where I've pulled oil coolers out and there was pieces of RTV covering these holes. I've seen where the holes are clogged and you actually have to shove a piece of wire down through them. This is where you get your oil cooler failure on a 7.3, which is almost non-existent, but it can happen if you don't take care of your coolant. So you can see in the camera here, you can see through all these holes pretty good. So make sure these holes are nice and clean. You know, I like to run the parts washer down through there, and then I'll take a can of brake clean with a hose, like so. Stick down in here and spray each one of these out and make sure they come out clean. So I do that. I actually had some sediment come out of these ones, and then we're going to go ahead and get these O-rings put back on. Only use Ford gaskets. Now I get these from Diesel O-rings. It's a free plug for them. So I go ahead and I buy the O-rings. You can buy it as a package from them, and that makes it a lot easier to purchase. So we'll go ahead and open these up. When you open these, be careful you don't cut your new O-rings. So like I said, these are a metal gasket with a rubber type O-ring, both sides. So this is your block side, this is your timing cover side. And like I said, you can get these wherever you want. However, I get them from Diesel O-rings because you buy it as a set. Comes with everything you need. And then obviously these green ones, which you can see here, aren't as square as what I took out. See, they're nice and round. So we'll grab some of this Super Lube. You can buy this anywhere you want. You can even get this at Harbor Freight. So this is a good product. A lot of guys will tell you can use Vaseline on there, which you can, but this is also a food grade dielectric, and this will dissolve in coolant and also in oil. So take some on your finger here and go around the O-ring. Make sure you get it good and coated. You're going to make a mess doing this. Never fails. So slide it on. This lubricant really makes this much easier. And there's that one. So we'll do one side at a time here. So lubricant on the O-ring. Make sure you get the whole way around it. You don't need a whole lot the first time. I like to go ahead and put another coat on. And like I said, that one goes on the end. Let's see if we move this camera up a little bit for you. So go all the way around. And if you got a little bit of dirt on here, you can always wipe that dirt off. Obviously, you try to want to do this as clean as possible. So on, and then just work it down around. slide it down into its position. So same thing with this one. And then it just goes on the end here. So now that you have O-ring silicone lube all over your hands, I like to go ahead and put some right on here, because this is going to be your biggest spot where you're going to have the most resistance. So, and this one was also the one that was the most corroded. So make sure I put enough on there to make sure that we don't cut any O-rings. And we'll go ahead and do this side too. While this one is smooth, you still want to put lubrication here to make sure that that O-ring slides in there nice and easy. And then we'll go ahead, put a little bit more on here. Don't go crazy with this. Basically all you're doing is you want to make sure that when you put these on, that you didn't wipe all the lubrication off when you put them on the cooler itself. So make sure you got a nice coating on there. And we'll go ahead and do this one first. So we have your alignment pin here, and it's going to line up with this here. You can see that goes on pretty good. On, just like that. So this side, same thing. Lubricate these. Like I said, you don't got to go crazy with this. You just want a little bit on here so that you make sure you got a nice coating. A little bit too much on there. And do both O-rings. Because as you can see, that slid on there really, really nice. A lot of guys have problems getting these on, put back together. So now, like I said, there's no alignment on this one. So you have to make sure that you have this oriented the correct way. So like here's your mating surface for your block. You want to make sure that your mating surface is in the same orientation. So get it as close as you can. And I've had problems with these ones before because you're trying to get this to go on. So we're going to go ahead and do it this way. So this one wants to fight me. So make sure you got your orientation pretty close. Some guys will use a ratchet strap to pull these together. And there it went. Slid right in. So like I said, you can move these a little bit, as you can see, because you have enough lubricant on those O-rings. This one actually needs to go in a little bit more. So there we go. So this is what it looks like fully seated. You can see that pin's real close. This one's all set in too. So that's an oil cooler rebuild. So this is your cooler. It's all rebuilt here. And if you use a high quality lubricant, like I've used Vaseline before, but this Super Lube works really, really well and lets you get it all put together. So like I had said, guys will sometimes use a ratchet strap to pull these together, but you don't have real good control over how that gets seated on there. You can get them to get crooked and then they don't want to go. So I had set two 2x4s up on the floor, and as you can see, one's not enough for this. So you set two right here, and then you go ahead and you push on this top with your weight. So what that does is it lets you feel how that is going on. That way you know if you're not going on or you don't mess something up, because these are just aluminum. They're easily broken. I've seen guys break them before. And then what you can do here now is if you wanted to paint this, you can take this and wire wheel this all up, because now this is all sealed up, and give that a paint. So I use high temp paint for that because that oil temperature can get hot. So Hope this video helps you out, and we're going to try to keep covering 7.3 stuff for you and OBS content. Like I said, this is for a Super Duty, but it's identical to an OBS. And something else that I'd like to point out is this little seal. It's like a valve right here. This one's C-clipped in. It's got an internal clip. Kind of see it there. So OBS trucks, some of them have this valve staked in, and it can go missing on you. You'll notice it when you change your oil filter. So something I want to mention was that if you change your oil, always make sure that that is in there, because if it's not in there, that can cause you problems. So make sure that this is always in there. You can restake the ones that are staked if they fall out. Usually those are the ones that give you problems. The ones that are clipped in don't usually give you problems. So hope this helps you guys out. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.